Hi guys, how are you?
Good. How are you, Rachel?
I'm
Nice to
doing
meet you.
I'm
Thanks
doing
for
great. Yeah, of course. So actually I used to intern at UCB Chelsea. So I used to see you guys doing improv all of the time, back when UCB Chelsea existed.
Right. Oh,
And so for me, these shows are so fun because it's like that was the comedy that I kind of like first fell into when I moved to New York and got to see like improv in that way. And so for both of you, getting to kind of bring those improv styles to something that does mix mediums like this show does, what was the fun of getting to kind of navigate comedy in that way versus, just a straightforward improv interview based show?
well,
I
first,
think
it's so cool that you interned at Chelsea and that you're interviewing us now. That's great because similarly, like that's how my like love of comedy is so rooted in me being a student and an intern at UCB.
Mm-hmm.
I think part of why Brandon and I gravitated towards each other in that community is because we liked stuff that was funny, but that also felt human. And one of the reasons we started writing together is Brandon took this playwriting class and he wrote this beautiful little scene. It's just an exercise about this couple that was splitting apart, and this guy was at the house that he used to share with his wife, and he was packing a bag to take their kid for a night by themselves, their first night apart now. And the mother of the child didn't want to give the copy of Goodnight Moon that was so special because she wanted the kid to associate the book with her house. And it was just this like really complicated, sad human story. And I think more than anything in the comedy world, it was actually that kind of thing that drew us to each other as a kind of um, attraction to human vulnerability and all that stuff.
Yeah, and what for me is very fun about the show outside of like the improv element is I've been saying I know they're puppets because Jay told me that they were puppets that are part of the like more animated section, but it reminded me of like comedy bits like Celebrity Deathmatch and like the old claymation movies that we used to always have in the 90s and the 80s and stuff. And so for you guys, was that bringing that style specifically back? Was that kind of your inspiration for this, or did it just fall into looking that way by the end product?
I think for us, because the characters who are in NPR are very similar to us, and we thought that to have characters who are these very delicate, slightly twee puppets that can break easily and who are controlled by forces that they're not even aware of felt thematically appropriate because we feel like people like us are probably like that too. Delicate, break easily, a little precious, and probably are being motivated by puppeteers that we're not even aware of.
Yeah, and Brandon, it is, I was so happy because I was like, I've been following Zach for a really long time. I remember watching you do
Yeah.
improv. And so like to see you kind of involved in this made me very, very happy because I was like, yeah, Brandon, get
Oh,
it.
thank you.
And so
My mom was like that too.
she was like, get it. And so for you though, like what I keep asking UCB questions, sorry, but what I love is like since UCB went away from New York and is coming back, but it's when kind of vibe for you. Who do you like? Do you hope audiences go and like revisit those UCB sketches and revisit the UCB era went from something like this?
Well, I think people like you and I and Zach who came up with UCB, I think like UCB style improv, like something about it that always really appealed to me was that they would teach you sort of not to wink at your audience, that when things get silly or absurd, that's when you have to commit even harder to
Mhm.
the reality of the scene. And that was something we really tried to bring to this show when we were talking to the animators, because a lot of animation styles and people love it, but it can be so big and so broad. And we, from the very first conversations, we're like, we don't want it to be like that. If there's a stylistic comparison, we would often talk about the British Office as something where it really doesn't feel like the characters think they're being funny when they're being funny. They truly believe what they're saying in that moment, are truly being affected by what our other people are saying. And that was a part of like our UCB background that we thought was going to be really important to the just comedy that we like.
I do like the specification of like the British one because
I mean, the American Office too, and obviously Zach was on it, but like the British one was the one I found first.
yeah,
And was like, what is this? The first time I remember watching it, and it was like something that like turned off my parents. They were not into it. It felt like too uncomfortable to them, but I was like, I think it's great.
I love it. For last quick question for both of you, what was the most fun interview that you guys got to do? Because I do like the idea of like improvising and then animating it after because that's what Caitlin said happened. But what was the most fun for you guys that ended up being in the show?
There was one moment in when Zach interviews Tegan and Sarah that they where Zach went somewhere comedically and they recognized it so fast and played along with it better than we could have ever written. That was one of my favorite moments. Even still, I'll go back and watch it and just notice something new and specific and how they play it and the looks on their faces are so funny to me. And I think it's like such a skill that they were able to do that. That was one of my favorite moments.
I really love, I've had like a lifelong fascination with Mike Tyson, and to be able to talk to him and like find myself talking to Mike Tyson about loss. Um, but as a stop motion puppet NPR host, I was like, this is just like, I've either had a terrible, like, like, like a severe brain injury, and I'm like, this is the like weird last hallucination before I die, or this is a dream come true because I was so excited to be able to talk to him in that way. And then also Roxane Gay. It's so one of the things that was really fun was like I've read Roxane Gay's columns and she's often quite serious. And then to have an interview where she's being funny and kind of randy and irreverent and it's very sweet. It was just like such a fascinating, I don't know, new layer to her. And it just made me love her.
Yeah, I love it so much. Thank you guys so much for talking with me today. It made me so happy. And I can't wait for people to get to see the show.
Thanks, Rachel.
Great to talk to you, Rachel.